this presentation for you all. And again, thank you all for attending our presentation on protecting your DoD contracts by preparing not only for NIST, but for CMMC and easily and effectively. And really, as we've had said earlier as well, trying to demystify some of the concerns about what you are going to need to do as a contractor in order to be prepared for this. Next slide, Mike. We will go through a little bit around, do some introductions briefly. Mike is going to talk just briefly about the buzz around DFARS, NIST, and CMMC. We'll talk about tools and things that are available that can help make this a much easier process. And then we'll talk a little bit about how Digital Beachhead, Mike's company, can help you in that process, making it very simple and easy, and how SureShield supports that as well. We do intend to make this a more interactive session. So we would ask you, if you have any questions while we're going through, please direct those to the Q&A portion of the Zoom. And we will address some of those actually in the course of the presentation as well. And then, of course, we will take some time at the end to address anything that has not been so far. So today presenting is myself, Tom Leahy. I am the Senior Vice President of Sales and Business Development with SureShield. We are a technology provider that helps really leverage software and solution tools to make the processes of compliance a lot more efficient and easy. And a number of partners of ours utilize our technology to help in that process. Presenting primarily here today is Mike Crandall. Mike is the CEO of Digital Beachhead. He is a very well-recognized cyber expert, a speaker, a consultant, and he's got a long history of very, very well-recognized experience on what I would call the security and technology side through many years that he spent with the United States Air Force. And you can elaborate more on that, Mike, but really very, very in tune to what needs to be done to help protect our nation's infrastructure. And really has now taken that with Digital Beachhead to help those providers who are servicing the DoD to make sure that they have the right things in place to help meet their compliance requirements. So with that, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you. I know really kind of the focus is, we've heard a lot of, and one other thing just to note, Mike's company is a C3PAO candidate. So for those of you who are here, he has got the benefit of his company is not only at some point will they be able to do the certifications, but they also are able to help companies get prepared. And having that knowledge and having that insight and that communication will help those of you to be ready in that case. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike, but Mike, really, as we've heard, there's a lot of confusion, maybe a lot of questioning around what do I need to do in order to meet these requirements? What do I have to do now? What's coming? And what kind of things do I have to invest in order to make, make my company prepared and to continue to service these contracts that we have? And how can I do that in a, is it going to be too costly for me to be able to do that? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you explain a little bit about dispelling some of those rumors and really around things that can be done to help meet these requirements without breaking the bank.
I am a almost 21-year Air Force retiree. I was able to start doing network security and cybersecurity before cyber was really a term. I was fortunate enough to be in the right place at the right time when the Department of Defense was building networks. So we got to build them from the ground up. And now we've moved into, with Digital Beachhead, helping those companies who work with the Department of Defense and other government agencies provide their compliance through understanding the control sets and the technology that can help you fill those gaps. So without further ado, why are we even here? DFARS. DFARS in your contracts, in your Department of Defense contracts, spells out certain requirements for safeguarding data, starting with the DFARS 7012. That really talks about providing adequate and quote unquote adequate security. In 7012, they talk about becoming 800-171 compliant. So that leads us into 7019, where they now say you will be compliant with SP NIST Special Publication 800-171, and that you will document your compliance in the Supplier Performance Risk System. So basically, you will get a score based on the number of controls you meet. Funny enough, the control scoring system goes from -200, and I think it's 210, to a positive 110. That means there's 110 controls. You get 1 point for every one you are accomplishing. But if you do not accomplish them, you can get a negative up to a -5 per control. Then you have NIST 7020. That is saying that the DoD assessment requirements. This is giving the government permission to come in and do an audit on your IT. Right now, you're self-reporting your scores to the SPRS system, and they are moving to CMMC, which will be the next slide where we're going to. But in the interim, as a stopgap, what they're saying is you will report your score. Currently, that score goes in, no harm, no foul, no minimum score required. But what the government is planning on doing is doing randomized audits to find out where you are and if your scores are accurate. So that's their stopgap. While we get to CMMC coming soon. It's been coming soon for quite a while. The last we've heard is releasing the rule set. At first they were today. Now they're going to rule for comment, meaning we'll have time to put some questions in on the interim rule set. So while that kind of slides our CMMC implementation slightly to the right, it will give us time to ask questions and maybe shape it a little bit to our benefit. So that is going to be a positive. So what's the buzz? What is everybody hearing? These are the things I see you're hearing. If you hear something different, feel free to throw it into the chat and or the questions and answers. But the buzz, that CMMC is dead, that it's going to be impossible for small businesses to meet. It's too expensive. How do we confirm that we comply? We need help. Big one at the top, that you need some form of GCC, GCC High, regular GCC to be compliant. That if you get a bad SPRS score, you won't get a contract. And another big one is, do we need to be FedRAMP certified if we're using a cloud? So these are excellent questions, excellent questions. Hopefully we can help you kind of confirm what the real word is, what really can be done. Tom, did you have a poll?
We're going to take just a quick poll of the folks that are here, really trying to get an understanding of what your primary concerns are.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and launch that, and please go in for those who are participating, if you wouldn't mind just quickly. It's a multiple choice. You may have a number of things that you're concerned about, but just answering the poll in terms of what has got you most concerned.
I think from what we are a small business. We've worked with the federal government, so we're meeting this compliance. As a 3CPO candidate, we're awaiting our formal audit from the Department of Defense, so that way we can say that we are CMMC level 2 certified. And we have many of these same concerns that we've brought up. So they are not anything new or unusual.
Great. And why don't we, as we go into that, I'll end the poll and just give you a little feedback. Everyone who's answered has got concerns about being unfamiliar with what they're going to need to do. So there's still a lot of confusion about what do I need to do in order to become compliant. And then, of course, then the next highest are, well, is it going to be too cost ineffective for me? Is it going to be too costly for me to be, to meet compliance? So, and what am I going to have to invest in order to make that happen?
Perfect. And very, very solid concerns. So dispelling some of the rumors up front that the costs are going to be prohibitive. I will say, for those that are concerned, what do we need to do? We'll go through that in a little bit, but effectively there's 110 controls with NIST 800-171. A control is just a technical or policy implementation that you must accomplish, and then say that you have accomplished. They're broken down into three sections. You need to have a policy saying we shall. You need to have a procedure outlining how you perform that function. And then you need evidence that shows I did this, and proof that you accomplished your procedures via your policy. And that's what we're here for. We're here to help you walk through those kind of things. But to the rumors, it's expensive. Well, if you can understand and fully understand the 171 controls and know what is compliant versus what is not. I like to joke, two-factor authentication. We've all heard it, but how do I say I'm compliant? Well, technically, if my wife says I'm me and then I log in, well, those are two factors of my authentication and identifying who I am. I'm not really compliant, though. That didn't really check the box, even though I am having two different factors of proving who I am before I log in. So having that understanding of the controls and what is compliant, understanding that you don't need to duplicate your effort in that compliance. Many of these controls are asking for the same or similar things. So understanding what they mean and how you meet the control will help you in meeting the compliance and not actually duplicating the effort and doing something twice. And then knowledge is power. So we also work with a lot of companies like SureShield that allow us to bring lower cost solutions than the high price things we see online with the GCC High. To the GCC High, the government community cloud. It's a solid solution. It provides about 80% of the NIST 800-171 compliant. So even if you get the GCC High cloud, that doesn't make you compliant, but it's really expensive. Your commercial Office 365, $20 to say $35, depending on the level you get per person. In GCC High, it starts about $100 to $125 per person. And that's just for your Office 365 license. That isn't setting up your Azure Active Directory and all the other tools you're going to need. So the next big myth is that, well, whatever solution we use has to be FedRAMP approved and certified. The rules in DFARS said cloud solutions require FedRAMP. However, the actual ruling says contractors shall require and ensure that the cloud service provider meets security requirements equivalent, and I highlighted equivalent, to those established by FedRAMP. So they do not have to meet FedRAMP, meaning they've been certified through a government agency, which costs people a ton of money. So there's very few companies that have done that. So what they do is they go through the FedRAMP controls, show they're compliant with the controls without the audit. So there are solution providers out there that have not gone through the expense of being FedRAMP certified. However, they have met all the FedRAMP control sets. So it's knowing where to look, having the right people to help point you in those right directions. So those are some of the myths. So how can we help you along the way?
And Mike, let me stop and just bring up, I think you're actually going to go into that. One of the questions that's come up is, we are a small company, less than 250 employees.
Yep.
And, there's a concern that they may even need to have additional employee counts or other costs in order to meet these requirements. What solutions are available that are what might be more considered cost effective? I mean, you're looking in that case, if that person was, at least you're explaining GCC High with 250 employees times 125, that's a lot of money, right? It's not even going to get you to totally to compliance. So really around, and I think you might be addressing this next, are what other solutions might be out there that will help them do that and still meet the requirements that are not going to cost them that much.
Exactly. And that is our sweet spot. Having worked with the federal government, having been on the other side of the coin, monitoring compliance, I focused on small to mid-sized businesses almost primarily because I wanted to make sure that we weren't, and when I say we, I as well, I'm a small business, we're not left out of the loop when it came to government contracts. So the making the compliance easy, and with easy, less expensive, is understanding what the controls are and how to be cost effective. So the first thing, know thyself, prepare for the compliance. Understanding your system config and data flows. Scoping. So with NIST 171, 800 171, CMMC, it is all about the controlled unclassified information or the contract information, the protected contract information, PCI and CUI. If you know where that data is, how you receive it, how you send it, you can minimize the scope area as far as what systems require the certification. Case in point, you have 250 people, say 200 people, small business, but you have a finance department, a marketing department, you have your RFP response team. None of those individuals have anything to do with CUI, say. They don't have it in what they're working on. Their systems do not need the same level of security as the engineer who might be working government diagrams that is actually going to be labeled CUI. So if you can segment those users out within your network, you can draw a circle around the CUI portion, the protected portion, and the unprotected portion. And then there are systems and service providers that can help you with that overlay. We're going to mention them in a bit, but Prevail is one, so that you can secure those specific users with the protections they need, thus reducing the cost. Using SureShield as a monitoring and control set, so we know what controls you're meeting. So there are lots of these little tools we can do. So knowing yourself, understanding the compliance. The next step, of course, getting professional help. We've worked with clients who have done I'm going to do the self-assessment, I'm going through the 110 questions. But if you don't have that full understanding of what they mean or what they're asking for, or more importantly, what the government is going to expect as evidence, proof that you've met that control, it's a lot easier to have someone in your corner helping you out. And that's where working like with Digital Beachhead and SureShield, It's all centralized on a website that we can monitor and track your control compliance. And then maintain a centralized location for all your evidence and policies, et cetera. And then alternate solutions research reviewed to meet compliance. While we know there are tons that we work with, there are a plethora of services online, all trying to sell to you. I get them daily. We work with you to kind of weed through those and find out, you know, you're not FedRAMP certified, but you've met FedRAMP controls, or we don't know what FedRAMP is. So, you know, we might as well just check them off and not be speaking to them. What this all provides you is that confidence in your self-assessment and for the future certifications and possible audits that are coming from the government. So it's a solid understanding of your controls. When we work with you, not only do we just go through and ask you, yes, no, are you doing this? We explain to you what the control means, what it means when you've met it, how you've met it, how you would continue to meet it and or monitor it as you continue through your process. For anything you don't meet, any controls that you have yet to find compliance on, you have to build a program of actions and milestones, the wonderful POAM we heard about, and that's how you plan out your future implementation so that you can meet controls. So know yourself, get some help, and then, and only then can you really have some confidence in what you're doing, because you've got the way ahead. So what we like to do, Digital Beachhead, our playbook, we think it's achievable, affordable, and more importantly, it provides you security, not just compliance. I would love to say, you know, it's even cheaper just to check a box, but if you can check the box and actually increase your security, that helps out, you know, immeasurably across your business life cycle beyond just meeting this compliance. We work with multiple cybersecurity vendors. As I mentioned, Prevail, Virtu, Silver Eagle, and QuickTrack are just a few we work with. They all provide lower cost solutions than GCC High, all of whom meet the government FedRAMP and other government standards, encryption standards as well. So finding your scope where you have information and then putting in these systems to protect that specific data. We work with the accreditation board as a candidate through CPO. So we're constantly talking with the CMMC AB. So that way we know what's coming up, what they expect, and more importantly, how does the government expect your evidence, your answers to controls? What do they expect to see? We're a small business. I'm a service disabled, veteran-owned small business. So I've done federal contracts myself through our company. So I understand what it is to do those things. We used to hold a security clearance. So we had our FCL, our facility clearance. So I've been through that process as well. So we know how that ties into your cybersecurity. The biggest thing, knowing how your data is stored and flows. How are you going to be audited? So really having an understanding of where your data resides, who is actually manipulating and using that data and how it flows through your system is the most important. We like to work as part of your team. I really, while we can do it, we can come in and tell you where you are and leave you to be. We tend to want to work into what we would like to say is a virtual CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, arrangement to where we kind of join the team and help you fractionally to become compliant. So we're helping you with your cyber compliance in a multitude of ways that I'll get into. We also provide you intel reports, dark web reports. If anyone here would like a free dark web report, feel free to contact us and I can send you out a dark web report on your company to see where and how you might be being mentioned on the dark web. And I think we now have, this is kind of our,
and Mike, can I ask you just a couple of questions, and maybe for the audience, if they may or may not be familiar with these types of tools, but you mentioned some other lower cost products that may get you there. Can you give just a little overview of what something like Prevail or Virtru or Silver Eagle or Quick Track does?
Absolutely. So Prevail and Virtru, they are basically overlays onto your current Office 365 or Gmail, whatever web or mail service you're using. Most people are on Office 365, but if you're using Gmail, they also can connect to that. And they provide you the email encryption that is required as a part of NIST 800-171, so that way you can send and receive CUI encrypted. They also provide you secure storage for that same material.
Okay, and then how would that, so how would that differ in terms, so at a GCC High, if I'm using Outlook, basically, that's telling by having that in place, they have those similar types of solutions, I assume.
Well, and the difference with Prevail and Virtru and why I say they are overlays.
Yeah.
Going back to your scoping, if you have 200 users, 50 of which need to send and receive and store CUI data, you're only paying for those 50 users on your current email system. So instead of going GCC High, moving everyone into that environment, you'll pay for 50. And their prices start at about $35 a user versus, so even if you figure you're paying for your Microsoft license of $25, an additional $30, $35 to Prevail, you're still at $60, but $60 for the limited number of actual users who need it versus your entire domain.
Gotcha.
So it's a huge savings across the board, and they meet the requirements. Silver Eagle provides you 24/7 security operations center and endpoint management, which meets a great number of the controls, and it's usually one of the ones that is most lacking. It is also lacking if you get GCC High. So within GCC High, that they do not provide SOC services. You still need to have someone monitoring your devices. So Silver Eagle does that. And again, they are fairly low cost per endpoint. Prices depend on number of endpoints, those kind of things. So it's a variable, but it's anywhere from $20 to $40 per endpoint. And then Quick Track is a unique system to where they have a NIST 800-171 virtual environment that they will build out for you. So you use your system and then you just connect into your virtual secure environment.
Gotcha.
So that's a different way of doing things. Gotcha. And there's different companies that do these same things or similar things. It's just finding the right ones. These are the ones that we've worked with that we found to be the best value. They're not necessarily the lowest cost. They're far from the most expensive cost, but they're giving you the value for money.
And excellent. Just a note, and if you want to go on to the next slide for those who are participating, if you have requests at the end of the session, we're going to take a quick poll for anyone that would like to be followed up. And so we have already had one individual indicate that they would like to have contact from you. Just to let folks who are participating know that if you are interested in any of these things, we'll have someone follow up with you in regards to that.
Awesome. Thank you, Tom. So this is just a quick flow of how we would operate with you. We tend to try to get into a 12-month agreement, one that helps spread the cost across 12 months instead of a one flat fee up front to get you certified or get you prepared for certification, self-certification at first, and then actual certification from the CMMC board when that becomes available. But we start with a control review. We set up your awareness training. That's all included in our fee. So you get the cyber awareness training, which is one whole domain. We provide dark web monitoring for you, and then we will create your SPRS score based on our control review. We then go over the evidence, because it's one thing to say, yes, we do that. It's another thing to say, okay, how do we prove it? So we help you create a little evidence book that shows where all the files are. And all of this, of course, is uploaded and can manage through the SureShield interface, which is a great centralized source, so that we all share the same data in the same spot. Keeps it very much consolidated for an auditor when it comes time to be audited. We do your gap analysis, and we create your initial POAM for anything that you have missing. This is where we reference those other sources of things that you may need, whether that be Prevail, Quick Track, you name it, we'll get you the right possible solutions. To include SureShield, they do vulnerability scans. They have a great vulnerability scanner built into their system, so we can get your vulnerability scans going. We work then on your policies. We go through the policies line by line, so that way the policies actually meet the NIST control sets. We develop your system security policy, which is a requirement for the SPRS score, along with your POAM. Included, we also develop your incident response plan, and we create tabletop exercises with you and run through some tabletop exercises so that not only can you say we have a response plan, we actually test it. Then we finalize your evidence book through the SureShield centralized repository, and you then have everything you need to say, this is my NIST score, this is what I'm uploading in SPRS, and hopefully from the beginning to the end, your SPRS score will increase from the initial review all the way through, because if you notice in the middle, we start our POAM review monthly to find out which things can we fix along the way. What do we need to implement? These are just some of the things we do: the gap analysis, the system security plan. We write you a nice POAM. Like I say, we like to think of ourselves as your virtual chief information security officer, fractional. So you're not hiring a full-time staff to do this. We work with either an individual or a team, depending on your business size and what you have available to you with your IT folks. And then we create your policies for you, your incident response plan, provide the training. Part of our cyber training is also phishing tests. So you can say you're testing your users monthly for phishing. And then we get you the compliant networking. So that way, if you need it, we have teams of people that can build you a CMMC compliancy in a box. That comes with firewall, SIM, depending on your security architecture and if you're centrally located or not. And then we give you what you probably need most is your SPRS score based on your POAM and SSP. So that way, you know, you have a solid score moving forward. I like to say the path to cybersecurity begins with a conversation. So thank you guys for being here. You know, if we remain in the shadows and just wonder, you're never going to get the answers. So I love to come out and talk about cybersecurity, be it compliance or otherwise. And with that, Tom's going to tell you a little bit about SureShield, and what they do.
Absolutely. And actually, another question that's come up. We know today, and it is still a requirement to participate in these contracts, Mike, that they have a NIST score and a submission of those to the SPRS, correct?
Can you say that again, Tom? So
the current requirements are that organizations that are participating in these DoD contracts need to be submitting 800-171 score as well as a POAM and an SSP.
That's
to
correct.
The SPRS. Okay.
Correct. The current contract should all have the DFARS that I quoted on the front, the 19, the 20, and 21, that are basically requiring 800-171 compliance.
And we're also, is there any, there's been at least things said around that while it was just doing that process, now it's more likely that they will kind of ramp that up and ask for Is there any indication of what an assessment score is going to need to look like in terms of like a number?
Yeah, currently they have no minimum score requirement. However, as CMMC is slightly sliding as we get the rule sets in, the discussion is the audits. So while the first step won't be you need to score a 10 to get a contract, they're going to start with, if you say you have a 10, prove you have a 10. So if you have a decent score, you know, you're probably more likely to get audited because they want you to prove it. But at some point, they will begin to factor in your SPRS score as part of the contract award.
Gotcha.
And specifically for small businesses that want to be a subcontractor, we are hearing from the Lockheeds and the big boys that are playing on the block. A lot of our clients who are small businesses are getting pressure from the big companies to have at least a minimum score.
Gotcha. So it stands to reason that even in lieu of CMMC final rule getting approved, they will most likely continue to ratchet up the enforcement of the NIST 800-171.
Yes, it is. It is definitely on the radar to have supply chain management in place, and protecting CUI is a top of that list. And the only reason I think they're dragging the CMMC slightly to the right is the Congress and the policymakers want to make sure it doesn't overly burden small business. But that's that fine line between security and cost.
Gotcha. And for those of you who are still participating with us, as I mentioned, if you're interested in the poll, in a free, no obligation consultation with Digital Beachhead, please go ahead and respond to that poll. I see a number of folks that are responding right now, but there's no obligation. It's a good way for you to discuss, because a lot of folks that were on here weren't sure what they need to do. And I think that they can give you a very good, at least in that open conversation, things that you're going to need to do to meet those compliance requirements. How we help support that is through technology that we provide to our partners that helps streamline the collection of that data. So Mike and the team leverage our ComplyShield tool to actually gather all the information, help answer the scores, and most importantly, have the repository of the data you're going to need to support an answer to a question. And this is not a static process. It's a continuous process, one from identifying where you may have issues that you can improve, but you'll always be asked for this regularly. So it's a very cost-effective way to have that all housed. And then, as Mike mentioned, we also have some tools that actually will help meet some of the controls, much like Prevail, as he mentioned, helps assure that CUI is protected, right, and encrypted. There's other things like controls that require that you do regular, what they call vulnerability scans, to look at your overall environment and make sure you don't have any potential holes in that. And we have tools that do that, as well as help direct you on how to remediate, how to fix those things so you can see how they go. So with that, I think we're to the last slide, Mike. Again, if any of you have interest in a follow-up, I think, as you've heard, particularly businesses that are what might be considered in that small area are very concerned, I think, around, is it worth continuing on these contracts if it's going to cost me an arm and a leg to do this? And there's a lot of confusion out in the marketplace about what is going to be required. I think hopefully we and Mike has helped dispel some of the rumors that if you do a proper overview of your own organization, there are a lot of very cost-effective methodologies that will help you meet these requirements without having to, you do the numbers on the one gentleman that said he's got 250 employees. That's almost, $300,000 a year if you're going to go to something like GCC High. And it's not even something that will meet all the requirements for you. So that's not necessarily an avenue you have to go to if you think, strategically about how you work to protect that data. So we still have a few minutes left in the presentation. Again, if you're interested in follow-up, we see several of you that are. Folks from Digital Beachhead will be reaching out to you to schedule that consultation with you. And then, of course, we will continue to keep you informed about changes and what's going on in this marketplace. For anyone that said maybe later they'd like to have a contact, we will have all our contact information available for you as well. And as I noted, everybody will receive the content of this presentation as well as the recording of the presentation as well. Mike, anything else you'd like to offer? I'm not seeing. Well, let me see. Hang on a sec. We have another.
There's one more question from Rick. I saw Rick has a question.
Yeah.
Does SureShield or Beachhead offer software, whereas POAM systems are available for documentation? The SureShield repository is centralized. We still use the paper, if you will. It's all virtual online. For the POAM, to track it and to be able to print it out, but it is all stored centralized in a repository. Rick, I hope that answers your question.
And I can make a further note to that. You can actually output the POAM in the SureShield product. Right now, there's additional data that needs to be added to that in order to outline timing, what you're going to do and the likes. We're actually further upgrading that so that a lot of that can be done inside the assessment. And then that will actually output all of the data that is required for the POAM. And I think if Chandi is on, we've also got some feedback. I think it was on the Fed. What was it, Chandi? The
FedRAMP plan of action and milestone template, which basically added a lot more information to that. So we are in the process of capturing all that is required to generate the plan of action and milestone report directly from the tool, so that you don't need to do a two-step process. Right? So that's in the works.
And if you asked for a follow-up, as part of that follow-up, we'll show you not only our process, but how our process integrates with SureShield and how we track it. So we'll show you a demo of that product as well. So you'll get to see how your evidence is collected and where it's all centralized stored and how you can access it at any time. So you get to see that. I also want to add that our client base, if you think, well, am I too small? Our smallest client is a single engineer. We have 2 clients who are single engineers that work directly for the Department of Defense. One works for the Department of Defense, the other is a sub. So we are helping them in a affordable fashion get CMMC NIST 800-171 compliant. So 250, that's a great size company, but we can really help you even if it's just you.
Yes, and that's to one of the questions, and I think we'll have the Digital Beachhead folks follow up with the gentleman that asked about what would it cost for a small 2-person company. We'll make note and have them follow up on that for the person that asked that question. And then if you can look at Rick's question again and help answer that as well, Mike.
Right. So while working with the U.S. federal government, they keep POAM measurements and documentation for each month's measurement. Just your reports and evidence were provided. Okay. So effectively, Rick, as part of the POAM itself, both stored online and in the spreadsheet we keep for you, we monitor the controls you haven't met, why, and what the timeline is. It's all a part of that tracking process. So it is the whole point of the poem is to say, yes, I hope to get to this. I need funding, or I need to implement two-factor. That'll be second quarter of this year. So yeah, we track that. And that's why we do the monthly meetings with you. That's why we tend to want to be a part of your team. You know, we work with you every month, and we keep tabs of that. So you will be quantifying it as you go.
Okay. And
great question. So,
and please,
tracking, exactly.
Yeah, we are getting close. We still have another about 10 minutes of the presentation, but if there's no more questions, again, please, if you're interested in having folks from Digital Beachhead get in touch with you, those of you that have answered yes, you will be getting a follow-up directly from them as well.
Yep. To Tom's question about the two-person, yeah, we'll be happy to. It's hard just to throw a number. It depends on what CUI, what information you have, where it is. But definitely know that we have, our pricing goes down to that 1-2 person user right on up. So it's not something we're scared of, and we've done it before. Good.
And if there's no other questions, there is one other question, Mike. Do you help with FedRAMP?
Mm-hmm. We can help you with your FedRAMP, going through the control sets. Absolutely. FedRAMP, just like NIST 800-171, is just a set of controls you have to meet. So it's understanding the controls. So we'd be happy to walk you through those controls and how you meet those. Same or similar process. It's just, you are the cloud, and versus we're connecting to the cloud.
And note, our software also provides those FedRAMP controls. So that is what we would call a framework that can be activated to do that as well.
Yep. Absolutely. Or 17,001 or 27,001. Mm-hmm. If you're going for ISO standards, or you want to be ISO certified. SureShield has those, and we work with clients through those. HIPAA, if you're in the medical, you know, so while we're talking about NIST and government contracts, compliance is what we do. So we're happy to guide any organization, any size organization, through those compliance hurdles.
Great. Well, and Mike, maybe just for the folks, maybe more, I would say, background. I know that we occasionally have done presentations, and you have a little friend that chirps in the back. Maybe you can explain if folks were wondering what that was.
If you heard the chirps in the background, that is my director of communications, Cashew. She's a cockatiel rescue bird. She's been chirping because she's upset she's not in the office on my shoulder. She tends to like to work with me, but sometimes she gets a little boisterous, which is why if you go to our website, you will see she is listed as our director of communications, because she likes to talk.
Good.
So well, no one is going crazy. No one's going insane. That was a bird.
Great. Well, with that, if